Willkommen, bienvenue, and welcome back to the modding of Isaac with Lyte. And today, we're going to be covering tiers. Not the stat, that one's still a bit wonky. We're covering when you fire tiers, what to do if you want them to be different. So a lot of you have been like, oh, how can I fire tooth shot? How can I make things a little bit different once they get out there? How can I have a random chance of giving them a damage up? Well, today we're going to be covering that sort of thing. So let's just get cracking. You can see what my pedagogical type item does, and then I'll show you how to make it work, and hopefully you'll be able to adapt this code to make your tiers do what you really want them to. So, as usual, we're going to start as Isaac. We'll have the item here in our first room waiting for us, and the item this time is the tunnel, near-death experience. And so when you fire your tiers, oh, there's a net, oh, a scythe, and a holy shot. I have the chance of it firing any one of them a bit hyped up because this is a demonstration and you don't want to have to wait forever to see all the different types of tiers. Now, these are not just cosmetic changes. So if we come on over into this room, Holy Lyte does Holy Lyte things. The nails, you'll notice, are smaller than you would expect because it doesn't have the size up that's normally associated with 8-inch nails, but the scythes are bigger than they would be by default. Now, this room was not particularly interesting for the nail shot, though. This room is going to be better because the nails break rocks, and only the nails. The other types of tiers don't. And oddly enough, they also bust open doors if you need to make a quick escape. So that's our near-death experience item. That's the ups and downs of what it does. So let's check out the code. Now, this is an ordinary mod. I've already covered how to make passive items, how to make costumes. All of that is not going to be covered in this. If you missed any of that, go back to the earlier episodes. I think it's like 3 and 9 that cover passive items and costumes. This one, we're just going to focus on tiers and making them do what we want. So the first little bit is the standard boilerplate, make your mod, set up game. The next line, set up your collectible type. Mine is tunnel to be get item ID by name, the tunnel. Done it a million times. Then we set the constants for our tunnel such that we can tune the various aspects of it as it goes. Now, I don't set the base chance here because it's only really used once. We probably could change some of the constants lower to be part of tunnel. Ah, why not? Code is all about improvement. Looking at it going, this could be better. Base chance. So the base chance in the demo was 50%. Half of your tiers on average would have the special effect. Oof, that's just no good. That's way too often. Let's say maybe 15% chance. Even that might be a bit high, because some of those tiers are pretty useful. And then we're going to have a thing called max luck. And that was at 6. We'll leave that at 6 for now. But the way I do the luck scaling in this, yes, it scales with the player's luck, maxes out such that every tier has an effect when you reach the max luck. So in this case, 6. So we're going to replace local base chance and max luck when we get down here. So we'll comment those out for now, and we'll fix that when we get to them. Then we've got a little thing that's hidden away here. These are the tier flags. I'm not entirely certain who compiled this list, but whoever you are, you're amazing. It goes through pretty much every potential flag for a player's tiers. And some of them, we're not entirely clear what they do. I haven't had a chance myself to go through and test them. So if any of you feel like testing, try out 48, 42, 34, and 33. All of these that are, well, we don't really know. Maybe you could be the person that figures it out. But these are the flags for giving the tier effects. I alluded to them in a previous video. Well, here they are in all their glory. If you don't recognize this notation, it's taking a single bit and shifting it to the left a certain number of places. So you take the number 1, and you take the number 1 and shift it over by 1. That's the number 2. 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, on down the line. All the way up to shifting it over 55 bits. It's a lot of bits. So we can use this as an enumeration when we want to set our tier flags. No matter what tier flag we want to use, it's in there somewhere. Okay, so we only have one callback in this entire thing. We only use the post passive effect update callback for this entire thing, because we always have some need of knowing the player. So we just have mod add callback, mod callbacks, post passive effect update, and then we send it our function, mod.onPassive. So every time we need to update our passive item status, we come up here to this function and run it from top to bottom. This first bit is the standard. I've used it every single time. When it's the first frame, you do something, and it gives you the item. I've got commented out, giving it to you directly, so you don't even have to pick it up, but for showcasing purposes, I spawned it on the floor. And then the rest of this entire callback is just, what do you do when you have the tunnel? Even has comments to that effect. They've got the item! Okay, so, say you've got the item. What do? Well, you look at all of the entities that are in the room. We have done this before. You grab pairs, which are just an index and then the entity. So index is the underscore because we're never going to use it, and then the entity is the entity. So for each index and entity in the pairs from Isaac.getRoom entities, grabs every entity in the room. You, your tiers, donation machines, monsters, everything that isn't attached to the floor. Rocks will not be found by this. Rocks are a whole other thing. We'll cover that soon. You do stuff. So you go through each entity and take a look at them. Cycle through all entities. Then you check if that entity's type is entity type, entity tier. So until you find a tier, you keep looking. If it's not a tier, you just skip it. You can follow this line all the way down. There is no else. There is only end. So that's why we indent like this, such that you can take this for and find its end. You can take this if and find its end. You can always look straight down to see, oh, this if has an else. So when we find a tier, what do? We look at its custom info, because we're going to be doing interesting things to the tiers. So you take your tier data variable, you just define it right here, and you make it entity get data. So you're grabbing your custom data table, which I covered in the previous episode, and putting it right here. And then you turn the entity itself into a tier, because tiers have certain extra properties that a regular old generic entity doesn't. So you need to convert it to a tier first, or it's not going to have everything you need. So we've got our tier data, we've got the tier itself, and then we have this if. If the tier data dot tunnel type is nil. And you're like, that, what? We haven't defined tunnel type. We haven't initialized tunnel type. And you know what? We don't have to. Get data, if you haven't put anything in it, just returns an empty table. So if you try to index tunnel type from it, it'll come back nil. The first time. After that, we're going to set the tunnel type, and then it'll know what kind we've got. But if it's uninitialized, we need to initialize it. So we initialize the tier if we haven't done so already. So what we do is we roll a 100-sided die. And what this math.random does, it returns a number from 1 to the number you give it. So between 1 and 100, inclusive, uniformly distributed amongst them, as far as I know. And we put that in this variable. We just roll the die once. Okay? Here we had to find those constants. That's a bad place for them. It's much better up here where we initialize all of that. So as we go through, we're going to replace these mistakenly added things to make it better. And whenever you take my code, make yours better, make yours different, make sure you know what each piece does, and then change it to do what you actually want. So this base chance, that's not actually what we want. We want tunnel dot base chance, such that when we are up top, we can change that value as we see fit. And so this base chance over here, same deal. As with this max luck, tunnel dot max luck. So these values are from up here. Tunnel base chance, tunnel max luck. Now this looks a little intimidating here, where you've got roll. If roll is less than some big complicated mathy thing, then do stuff. I'm going to explain each little bit. So we'll start at the end. Plus tunnel dot base chance. So our base chance is 15. So if you ignore this front part, you're just checking whether or not you rolled a 15 or less. Okay? So you roll a 100-sided die, you roll a 15 or less, 15% of the time, on average. You follow that so far? Because that's the fundamental being of probability. You roll a certain size die, and you have a certain chance of rolling above or below a certain number. I like using rolling low here. It's easier to follow. Because if your base chance is 15, if you roll under a 15 on a 100-sided die, 15% chance. Well, it just so happens if player.luck is 0, this entire term goes away. Poof. And it just so happens that Isaac's base luck is in fact 0. I didn't see that. So when your luck is 0, you have this base chance of actually having this happen. Great. So what's the rest of this nonsense? Well, I want it to scale with your luck. And I've made the decision here to make it grow linearly. We're having it grow in a straight line. So if you're paid attention in, well, I suppose it's, I don't know, pre-algebra, geometry, rise over run, people. Rise over run. mx plus b. Right here. B. Right here. X. The rest here is m. And you just figure out your line. So we've got our nice slope of our line here to make it do what we want. So we want this to count from base chance up to 100. So this 100 minus base chance is how much you've got left to get to 100. So base chance of 15, 100 minus, 85? So you got 85 percentage points of chance left to cover. Oof. It's a long way. But this is then just a constant, 85. How much of that 85 do we want? Well, you take your current luck and divide it by the max luck, which up top was 6. So once you get to luck 6, 6 over 6 is 1. So 85 times 1, 85, plus 15 is 100. All you have to do is roll 100 or less on a 100-sided die. Woo! You always win. What happens if the luck goes higher? Well, it just keeps going up. You have more than 100% chance. Oh, what? More than 100% chance? Okay, so now you have to roll under 110 on a 100-sided die. You're still going to do it 100% of the time. So if your luck goes above 6, you're still going to do it all the time. Say your luck is 3. Luck is 3, divided by 6 is half. So you get half of the way from 15 to 100. 85 over 2, so you got, what, 42.5 plus 15, 57.5% chance. A little over half. So this draws a nice little line from where you start at 0 all the way to 6, going from 15% chance to 100% chance. Now, this is only one of the ways to do it. You can have non-linear growth patterns where you get close to your max faster, or it takes longer to get to the max, or you never actually get to 100%. You max out at 50. There are tons of options. This is just one way of doing it and one way of thinking about it. Because you could have a maximum level minus something divided by your luck. So as your luck goes up, the chance approaches that maximum but never meets it. Math is a lovely, beautiful thing. It's got some dark corners, but generally it does pretty much anything you want so long as you tell it what to do. So that's all of the parts of this random roll. It looks a little intimidating, but it's fine. It's fine. So you roll that, you see whether or not you passed. If you don't, so you failed that roll, you set the tier data tunnel type is 0. That's my custom defined 0th tunnel type. And you know what type that is? Default. It leaves your tiers alone. For the rest of their lifetime, it does nothing to them because tunnel type is now defined. You will never get back in to try to initialize that tier. It will fly along, live its normal tier life, killing normal tier things with none of our changes to it. We only roll for each tier but once. So say the roll succeeded. You rolled under a 15 on your 100-sided die. Well, then you set which type of tier you want. This time, equal chance among the 3. Math.random of 3. It generates a 1 or a 2 or a 3. Equal chance of any one of them. You could do a similar thing as this. You could do some other weighting scheme to make one more likely than the others. So you could have any sort of math here to make it show up exactly how often you want. You could even add a thing that counts, and it says every third tier, not some random third of your tiers, exactly every third tier. You could just have a counter in here, keeps track of it, go on with your life. This particular one does it randomly. So if you set tunnel type 1, you do this initialization. If you set it to 2, you initialize this way, type 3, this way. Follow? If type 1, if type 2, if type 3, end. I don't leave just an else here because if I change this to a 4, that'll double how likely the Gomorrah shots are. And that's not what I want. It would be an accident and it would be bad. So I set it this way just in case I mess something up. It happens. So let's make something death touch. First, tier : change variant. So you're changing the variant of the tier to tier variant dot scythe. Really? Edmund, Tyrone, someone there? Scythe. That's how it's written in the documentation. It does in fact work, despite the spelling problem. They might change it, so don't get too attached to your code. So that changes the variant to scythe. It makes it look like a scythe. It does not make it act like a scythe. You then have to take the tier flags and set it to flag piercing. Those are the tier flags from up here. You need to define these if you want it to work. Otherwise, you're going to have to set it to 2 yourself. And then it'll be far less readable. Use enumerations when you can. Makes your code a whole lot more readable. Then we want to make it more powerful. Ugh. So you can take the tier and set its collision damage. So I take its current collision damage because we want to play well with other items. So we take its collision damage and set it to its collision damage times our damage multiplier. Decided to do a damage multiplier instead of just adding damage. It's more fun this way. So tunnel.damage mult set up here, we double the damage. Boom. Okay. But normally, players expect their tiers to get larger when they deal more damage. So we need to make the tier bigger, but in more ways than one. Tier : set size sets the size of the tier. Not the tier that you see, the tier that does work. So we need tier.size tunnel.scale. Boom. It's entirely possible that this vector changes the sprite scale. It's possible. I forgot to test that. So it's possible that this changes the sprite scale. It's also possible if you want to change the shape of the tier, you can do it here. And then this 8 is the number of grid collision points. I set it to 8 because that is the number from the normal Death's Touch item. So if you want to test this out, feel free to make it like this. The tier.sprite_scale equals tier.sprite_scale times tunnel.scale. So this vector would instead be this. Let's give it a shot. We'll run it again at the end and see whether or not it does in fact make them larger, or if it crashes the whole kit and caboodle. Always be willing to change your code as you go. Tunnel type 2 is Holy Light. All you have to do is set the tier flags to be Holy Light. You're done. It adds the halo, it adds the crack the sky effect, all of it's done. Holy Light is a nice little effect that doesn't take any extra work to implement. Death's Touch has some things that are shared with enough that it isn't implemented as part of the flag. And there isn't a Death's Touch flag. You can check in here. There's no scythe. There's no Death's Touch. I mean, sure, you got Holy Light, sure, you got Godhead, because they're really weird and interesting. But there's no scythe, there's no Death's Touch. There doesn't need to be. And then for the last one, the Gomorrah shots, you've got tier, change variant to tier variant nail instead of scythe. It just makes it look like a nail. It doesn't add any damage. It doesn't add any of the effects of the nail. Doesn't make it bigger. It's just perfectly normal, but looks like a nail. So that's the initialization step. So you roll your die, you set your stuff up, and this tier data, because it came from get data, is attached to the tier itself. Okay? So then, these continuing effects are when you're looping through the entities and it doesn't have a nil tunnel type. It has a tunnel type set. So if our tunnel type is 3, those are the Gomorrah shots, and your tier collides with the grid is the floor. So any rocks, pots, fires, maybe not fires, but anything that is firmly attached to the ground, this will check whether or not it collides with it. So when you hit a rock or a pot, then we do some things. We get the room from the game. So our local room is game, get room. Then we get a grid entity. So we ask the room to get a grid entity from a position, and we ask for the tier's current position because it's colliding with the grid. So we get a grid entity back. If it's not nil, I do this check just because I'm not 100% sure every tier I'm going to fire that hits a grid entity will return it properly. And when you hit it, you destroy it. Boom! It's gone. That's why it destroys doors, rocks, and pots. Haven't gotten to test it on walls, because walls should be indestructible. You shouldn't be able to destroy them, but you might. It's worth further investigation. And if it is nil, then send a debug string to the log saying, I can't destroy that. It doesn't exist. This is fairly good practice for debugging. Just make sure that you don't assume something will be the way you think it should be. You think this should return a valid grid entity. Does it? Does it really? If you're not 100% certain, throw in some debugging text. Heck, throw in some debugging text anyway. On success, on failure, on summoning, on anything. Just put it in there. Try not to be too verbose, but anything of importance, you might want to log. And then you have a whole bunch of ends that match up with all of the things that came before. And that's all there is to all of these tier modifications. I mean, it's 130 lines of code to have an item that... Heck, we even wasted a lot of lines here. We only used 2 of these. So it's still not a lot of code to do some very cool things. We're going to save this. Save it on up. We're going to head back into Isaac. And we're going to reload the mod. So, Lua mod, tunnel. So we have reloaded the mod. We already have the item. And it is still firing things. But you can see that the chance of firing any given shot is much reduced. It still breaks the rocks, though. Haven't gotten any scythes, though. Makes you wonder, did we have an error in our scythe code? So let's head back over here. Always have your log file handy. And scroll all the way to the bottom. So we loaded main.lua. There are no errors. Seems we just haven't rolled a scythe just yet. So if we head back into Isaac, we can fix that. We can go back in and go give item. And then let's go with Luckfoot because we want luck. C46. So that increases our luck by 1, which makes us more likely to fire tiers of the type we want. Okay, still no scythes though. Makes you wonder. So let's give ourselves many more luck feet. Hey, there are scythes. Now, are they bigger? It's kind of hard to tell. So if we go back to our code, all it takes is coming up to your settings here and going, well, let's make it obvious. You save it, you go back into Isaac, you reload your mod. Okay. Oh, hey look, it works! And we're dead. So, it turns out that I had a bit of unnecessary code. So you don't actually need to use the sprite scale. This first bit is the effective size of your tier. The second bit is the visual size of your tier. And then number of grid collision points. I don't know all the fine details of that just yet. So you can usually assume that if you're modeling it after an existing item, just use the values that were used there. That's all I've got for you today. I will see you in the next episode of the Modding of Isaac with Lyte.